Welcome to a Brand Experience webinar. I'm Linda Casey, Editor-in-Chief of Brand Experience Magazine. Today, we are joined by 3 design and marketing experts who will share their insights about measuring marketing and design's effectiveness. And this inspirational webinar is free for registered attendees, thanks to our sponsors: 121 Corp, Digimarc, Dot Matrix, Fiberbox Association, Force Packaging, HP, Porchlight, PrintPack, and WestRock. Our first speaker is Scott Young, who is the Global CEO of PRS in Vivo. The mic's all yours, Scott.
Hi, everyone. This is Scott Young. I'm the CEO of PRS in Vivo, and I'm really happy to be with you today to share some thoughts about the challenge of both documenting and, importantly, of increasing design ROI, return on investment. I'll start by just giving a bit of background about PRS in Vivo for those of you who may not be familiar with us. We have indeed been around for almost 40 years, and we do several hundred shopper studies each year, partnering with design agencies and marketers, often to pre-test new design systems. It can be the packaging of new brands, it can be restages of established brands, involving both graphics and structure. As a result, of course, we see an awful lot of design systems each year across many categories in many, many countries. And I think if I have to speak to a commonality, we're fortunate to see the power of design. The power of design in influencing people's choices and decisions. The power of design in influencing their satisfaction with products and their intent to use them and to repeat usage. And we're enormous believers in the power of design. And in fact, I include that picture on the right side of the slide. That's Rob Wallace. He's been a partner to us, a colleague over many years. And he's really done some enormous and influential work on documenting the power of design and the return on investment of design and helping design professionals to make the case to senior management. I'd certainly encourage you to check out Rob's writing and do a little Googling there. But while we see the power of design time and time again, I think we're also very aware that design rarely gets the full credit it deserves. I think there's many, many reasons for that, but one of them has something to do with this quote from JFK, the idea that success indeed has many fathers. And what we mean by that is when initiatives are successful, frankly, there's often a lot of people ready and willing and able to take credit for it. And it can be extremely hard to isolate the power of design in driving change and driving success, as opposed to the power of a wonderful concept, an excellent product delivery, and so forth. And of course, they all need to work in conjunction for success, but on the design side, we have the challenge of making the case and to some degree isolating the power of design. So that's one major issue and major challenge, and I'll speak a little bit about how we can do our best to isolate and demonstrate the power of design. A second major challenge, try to illustrate through this visual here on the next slide, you may recognize it as a Super Bowl commercial. And in fact, it was a very powerful and effective Super Bowl commercial. But I think the bigger challenge we see is that marketers often mistake inputs with outputs. In other words, because commercials may be more expensive to produce or to place on air, they often intuitively or implicitly assume that they must be more powerful and more effective than design, which is not necessarily the case. So in some ways, the fact that design doesn't always require an enormous investment can work against it in terms of people's perceptions of its power and its influence and its return. And a third element that can work against the power of design or against documenting design is that, frankly, consumers don't often talk about it. They're more likely to speak about it when we deal with new structures and delivery systems. But when it comes to graphics in particular, there's often a gap between what shoppers say and what they do. We see time and time again, study after study, that design plays an enormous role in the shopping process. It drives what we would call deselection, when people look down an aisle, or look at a cluttered screen, and zoom in quickly on a small subset of products. So brand recognition, color blocking, strong visual equities, we know play an enormous role in how people actually shop and make decisions. But when we speak with people and we ask them about their decisions, typically they don't go there. Typically they speak much more about features and benefits and price points. So again, we have a lot of factors somewhat working together against the power of design. So how do we change that conversation? How do we get senior management, senior marketers to think differently and to really understand and appreciate how powerful design can be? Well, we don't think there's one specific answer to this, but I do think there's a few thoughts that we'd like to share with you that we think can help make a difference. And the first is really about a mindset. It's the mindset of driving behavioral change. Inevitably, when we speak about design, we speak about a wide range of issues. We often get immediately towards attitudes and perceptions and brand imagery. But the reality at the end of the day that marketers are almost always looking to sell. And selling more product is all about driving changes in shoppers or consumers' behaviors. And I think starting with that as a grounding point, when we think about design briefs, when we think about insights, when we think about return on investment, is really, really critical to making a stronger argument for power. So what does this mean, driving behavioral change? Well, it really means starting with the shopping experience as we create design and certainly as we test design. If you look at this slide, really what it illustrates is reversing the most typical process by which companies think about new products and concepts. You'll see on the right side of this slide is kind of the typical concept statement, which may or may not have a pack or a product design incorporated. Well, what we're saying is if we're looking to document the power of design, we really need a process that starts by putting products, new products in this case, within competitive environments and seeing how they influence choice. And that's really the metric that's going to speak more to senior management and make the case for design. As long as design is buried within concepts, it's going to be very hard to make the argument for its power to really drive shopper behavior. And as we move to the next slide, it's really two different illustrations, both physical and digital, of the single most powerful tool that design professionals have to make their case, which is essentially A/B testing or scenario testing. It's putting design in the context of shopping experiences and seeing and isolating its ability to impact the choices and the decisions that shoppers make. In the real world, when we launch products, inevitably there's a lot of noise, as I was referring to before, and it can be very difficult to isolate the impact of design. But one of the powerful things that insights and research can do is it can create scenarios where we isolate design as the only variable that's changed, and we can very quickly see whether an alternative approach is indeed making a difference in purchase patterns and behavior patterns. And that is something that's easier and less expensive and less time-consuming than ever before. So literally, in the matter of a day or two, folks can get immediate feedback and immediate data that shows a new design system is making a difference. And that is really what the design community needs to embrace and leverage in order to show the value of its work. So what we would say is really what you see here on this next slide from the design folks or a senior design leader at IDEO, which is just a very simple guidance of putting products on shelf or perhaps in digital environments and observing and documenting what happens. It's good advice to create better design, but it's even better advice in terms of documenting the value, and that's a really important principle. The remaining few minutes today, I'd also want to talk about two directions we've been pursuing to not only document the return on design, but importantly to help enhance it and improve it. And one major area is that of behavioral science. This is a fascinating new area of learning, one where we continue to see new learnings about how people really make decisions coming out from the academic world. And what's really fascinating is that the more we learn about how decision-making happens, the more we learn that often very small changes can really make a difference. And sometimes it's not about massive ad campaigns and massive fundamental design changes, but small changes in wording, juxtaposition, and so forth that really can have a huge influence on the choices people make. And we've been really diving into this learning and focusing hard on how to apply it. And I don't have the time to go into a lot of detail today, but I wanted to very briefly mention two directions we've been looking. One, we've been working with our sister company, the BBA Nudge Unit, to understand what we call the drivers of influence, which are things like reciprocity and anchoring and loss aversion, and think about how we can apply some of these core principles or heuristics to make design that much more powerful in influencing people's behavior. Getting the right messaging to complement a change in appearance, for example, or the right reassurance on the back of a pack to help foster a new behavior and turn it into a habit. This is really a fascinating area that can make design that much more powerful. And similarly, we've been working with a partner, his name is Will Leach of Trigger Point Design, who's really doing some really interesting and pioneering work on taking similar learning about decision making from behavioral science and really applying it to the design brief, helping make sure that when folks are launching design efforts, they have a true understanding of human decision making and a specific behavioral change in mind to help guide their efforts. So the combination of understanding mindsets and focusing on driving specific changes, whether it be trading people up, driving incremental purchase, or other paths, perhaps, to impact and return on investment. And finally, I wanted to speak to a parallel but very different area of opportunity to increase the power of design. And that's really leveraging the experience and the data that exists already. One thing that we've been doing over the past year or two is going back into our database of thousands upon thousands of designs, both for new products and for restages, and really looking at them in a different way and coding changes on the basis of design elements. And what it's really revealed to us is very interesting connections in terms of which types of design changes are more likely to drive success, as opposed to which types of changes are more likely to create risk. And while this is not intended to be a strict formula, what we do think it can do is really help folks avoid making the same mistakes and perhaps give designers and marketers a really strong grounding so that they can focus their efforts in directions that are more likely to drive success. So again, just to wrap up, I'd speak of two or three interrelated areas that I think should be top of mind in terms of this issue of documenting and increasing the return on investment from design. First and foremost, I think designers really need to embrace and encourage the idea of behavioral change and of isolating, doing scenario testing. Again, that's something easier and less expensive and less time-consuming than ever before. And it is the key to really showing that their work influencing, making a difference in terms of consumers' behavior. Secondly, I think there's a wealth of evolving knowledge around behavioral science that can really help designers make their work that much more effective. In particular, link design with messaging, which is a formula that we've seen help drive greater success. And then finally, as I mentioned a moment ago, the idea of really learning from experience in a systematic way. Again, not to result in a formulaic approach, but to really go into design initiatives armed with an understanding of which levers and which elements are more likely to help drive success. So I hope this has been some helpful food for thought, and certainly I'd be very happy to follow up both in answering questions or providing more information about any of these areas that I've spoken about.
Thank you, Scott. Our next speaker is John Denham. John is Vice President of Strategy and Accounts at Lextant and former Vice President of Disruptive Innovation and Design at Conagra. Welcome, John.
Hello, my name is John Denham, and I've been asked to talk about ROI on packaging today, which I'll cover off over the next 10 minutes or so. Just one thing before we get into it. It is more appropriate to talk about ROI and design. Why? Because consumers, brands, and our environments are rapidly becoming part of a smart system, city, or world. It covers from physical to the digital world, and as a recent past colleague of mine says, we are part of a phygital experience. So today I'm going to cover off what I consider to be the universal value for ROI and methodologies that help you get there. These values and methodologies are based on experiences with large CPG corporations like P&G, Kraft and ConAgra, and more recently my experiences being on the agency side and also being a judge on the DBA Design Effectiveness Awards for over 20 years. So whenever I think of ROI, I think of the 4 golden rules, which my old boss Phil Bess used to regularly drum into us as young design managers. They are business performance, management and peer feedback, adoption by others, and finally timeliness. So let's take a look at them in more detail. What is business performance? Typically, this is how the business measures the growth or decline of its brands, products, and services. Depending on the company, these measures show up in everything from daily, monthly, quarterly, and annual conversations, and in a wide variety of communications. So the universal business performance measure is financial growth. It is as simple a statement as that. People measure it and fragment it in different ways, but that is the consistent universal measure that every company uses. Here are a couple of examples. Head & Shoulders was redesigned and relaunched in 2007. It was a significant piece of package development and design for P&G. The brand at the time was growing at 14% per year, and back then it was available in over 100 countries across the planet. The team was nervous about redesigning. Consumers loved the product, but they didn't love the package, and we knew it. Consumers believed Head & Shoulders was almost medicine for the hair. They were embarrassed to pick it off the shelf, hiding it in their baskets, and when they get it home they hid it in their bathrooms as well. Clearly not a beauty aspiration. The new pack design forced the manufacturing group to change their capability and manage a new asymmetrical structure, which was a big investment. The new design also created development for R&D. They had to develop a new and clearer resin than had previously been used, because the new design needed to communicate the idea of clean and pure, and that was also a significant investment. All of this contributed to a brand being valued at the time of launch of around $700 million. 11 years later, the brand is now worth around $2.5 billion and has become the largest shampoo brand in the world. At the lowest point of the economic recession, the brand was still growing at 5%, so all of that investment was for the good. Fairy is a famous and long heritage dishwashing brand in the UK. A couple of years ago, it redesigned part of its lineup to compete more effectively with private brands and with Finish. The Fairy team, which sort of sounds odd to say, submitted this work to a design competition in which I was judging. Whilst I know and love the brand, my view of the design changes that were in the competition were not that favourable, to be honest. However, a peer said, "I hear you on the design. Not significant changes, but they also made minimal or no investment in supporting the change." The design investment in change represented less than 1% of the revenue they gained in year one, and in most management's mind, that represents good ROI. It also contributed to share growth and a more successful competitive stance in the marketplace. That was about the most compelling and concise statement of ROI on packaging that I'd ever heard, and I relented on my stance, and the example went forward to the next stage of judging. Those are 2 of many package design changes I've experienced. The success was measured exclusively by dollar growth on the business. So if you don't quantify your design change through financial growth, it's going to be tough to be successful. Management or peer feedback is how to get to good ROI, and is a nice way of saying you need lots of collaboration to make a difference with design and achieve good results. In one design leadership experience, I had 3 very simple objectives with my first president. These were: elevate design, do it in 50% of the time, and make design the place to be. The one that made me most nervous was doing it in less than 50% of the time. And the biggest challenge was frankly getting key stakeholders to align on what is design, the input and the output of the project themselves. So what do we invest in? A design council, whose purpose was to get exposure to what design is, also make integrated and faster decisions on the work. It sounds kind of cumbersome getting a team of 25 business leaders together and getting them to agree. But it gave the president and me an environment to encourage investment in design and fast decision-making. We did, and it was the single biggest thing that contributed to reducing time by 50% and getting revenue in quicker. So, get lean if you can, and or make friends, because the path to good design or packaging ROI is paved with many stakeholders who may or may not help. Adoption by others means essentially if you're doing something well on a brand or a business, how quickly can you get that around the organization to make an even bigger impact and increase your ROI? Over the course of redesigning the frozen food portfolio at ConAgra, the Marie Canda's redesign leveraged a new approach to research. The business had a long heritage of investing in evaluative techniques to assess design impact. With Marie, we changed this to a more generative process and leveraged Lexton's sensory cues process to understand what consumers really wanted. This process resulted in accelerated time to market by an order of magnitude of 35%, and significant reductions in design and research budgets versus prior projects, up to 60%. One of the other products of the process was driving alignment across key stakeholders, including management as well as multiple discipline silos. This led to the adoption of the process across 8 other brands. Not everything is in market yet, so we don't know if this is all successful. But one thing we have seen with Healthy Choice is over 20% growth with new products like Power Bowls, and the year-on-year declining base business has returned to modest growth of over 5% based on this change. Developing designs, packaging, or even process can all deliver value. Make sure teams, stakeholders, all understand the value and all that it means, and this will facilitate a quicker and more efficient path to business success. Timeliness is not just about doing things quicker. It is more about when you do something and is it the right time for your customer and consumer. For example, it could be the confluence of trends or competitive activity that drives activity, and you could be fast following, which isn't altogether a bad thing. I've included an example of a BOPUS system, buy online, pick up in store. The retailer in this case felt the need to integrate their digital reach with in-store packaged goods to improve their consumer experience. They weren't wrong. Their consumers started to engage differently, and while speed led to not delivering all of the objectives immediately, they were able to fast learn about the opportunities in the system, course correct them, and improve the consumer's journey delivering their original goals. A good example of being timely and also continuously learning and improving. There's nothing wrong with being a fast follower and using thought leadership like search and reapply. There have been notable brands that have done this throughout history. One thing you should consider very thoroughly in this ever-accelerating growth of e-commerce, multi- or omni-channel brands is be very thorough on end-to-end thinking and what the system needs to deliver the proposition and expected ROI. So in conclusion, ROI for packaging or design in this more e-commerce driven digital world almost exclusively focuses on business growth as its first and most important metric. Depending on your organization, some hows on achieving this revolve around management and peer feedback, adoption of good work practices and timeliness. Those to me are the 4 principles or rules of achieving good design ROI in your organization or with your clients. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Our final speaker is Jay Peters, Managing Director of Park USA and Grow USA, which happens to be an educational partner of Brand Experience magazine. The mic's all yours, Jay.
Welcome to the webinar Design Value, Measuring Design Effectiveness and ROI, presented by Park in collaboration with BXP. Most of us are familiar with this saying, which dates back more than 4 decades ago. When the former IBM CEO stated that good design is good business, he was speaking mainly of graphic design and corporate brand identity. Initiatives undertaken at that time gave IBM a unified global premium brand perception. Today, 45 years later, this statement is even more true. Good design is good business, although design has and continues to evolve and encompass many more disciplines such as behavior design, business design, service and experience design, just to name a few. So, when does design and innovation add value to the business? Many studies have shown that the main challenge is to generate relevant ideas and to convert those ideas effectively into business success, while only 25% of organizations do both well. The obvious reaction for most organizations, and even countries like China and India, is to increase their design budgets and R&D expenditures. Additional studies have proven that it is not the size of the budgets, but the way design and innovation is led and managed that leads to success, and therefore more positive ROI in design initiatives. Success in most companies can be mainly attributed to leadership, choosing where to go, and management, knowing how to get there. Better said is the what and how. In our framework model, we have identified many areas that design can add value to the business, such as increasing profit by either increasing sales and or decreasing cost. Further, design can add brand value by increasing brand awareness, loyalty, and recommendations, thus helping to move the needle forward on Net Promoter Scores. Design can also help drive and deliver more efficient and effective innovation and IP, and innovation specifically from outside or consumer-led efforts. Lastly, design can add value to the business through cultural transformations and creativity, design thinking, and even social and environmental issues. It should be noted that today, growing the bottom line profits are no longer enough to stay competitive in today's transparent and social media-driven world. Leading companies are also factoring in their social and environmental impact in the global marketplace, referred to as the triple bottom line. Some leading companies, such as PepsiCo, who is now described by the CEO and executives alike as a purpose-driven company, is adapting the triple bottom line approach and positioning their products amongst the people and the planet. PepsiCo is committed to delivering top-tier financial results to their stakeholders while also being responsive to the needs of the world. Unilever, a long-term Park client, whose current CEO makes social and environmental issues a leading driver across all functions in the organization, including design, has promised to improve the health and well-being of 1 billion people by 2020, as well as half the environmental impact by 2030. This is quite a goal for a CPG company that sells more than 1 billion products per day. Design not has to only contribute, but deliver on their lofty sustainable living plan. Thus, the ROI of many design initiatives will have to quantifiably prove their contribution to this plan. There's lots of proof around that show how design can and has delivered more value to customers, consumers, and companies alike. I would like to present two Park case studies that exemplify such. At GlaxoSmithKline, the incoming CEO had the vision to be the world's first fast-moving healthcare company. To do so, she invested in design by firstly bringing in a design director, who is now global VP, to build a design function to deliver on her vision. Historically, design at GSK was non-existent, managed only by marketers, and mainly thought of as a logo on a box. Design helped to achieve the CEO's vision by identifying, designing, and delivering branded experience across all touchpoints, thus elevating brand perceptions and positionings, and therefore driving more sales. One of the first brands to undergo an experience design transformation, creating a holistic brand experience across all touchpoints, from product to packaging, from physical to digital, was the brand Sensodyne. Sensodyne has since become GSK's first billion-dollar healthcare brand, selling more than $1 billion annually in sales. By focusing on the different users and their needs, from customers to consumers, caregivers and payers, Sensodyne became the premium brand in their category. Seeing ROI of such design efforts from one brand has driven great interest across the other business units to help them drive sales and create a more sustainable competitive advantage. Another example of design adding value to the business is Lego. Everybody knows the Lego brand, but not many know the Lego story. In 2004, Lego was nearly bankrupt and out of business, losing more than €1 million per day. And design was part of the problem, as they were driving development costs across the company. With the newly appointed CEO in Park, we helped Lego create and implement a transformational design for business program. This program aimed to improve the contribution of design to the business, consisting of developing and implementing improved ways of working that led to operational efficiency and market effectiveness, while still allowing for creative power. One key component, in addition to the process and tools developed, was to appoint a core team of design, marketing, and engineering leads together on all product and experience developments, thereby breaking down the proverbial silos. These integrated multifunctional teams were jointly responsible to deliver against clearly defined business KPIs and improve the ROI of their development efforts. One such example is that of the former Front-End Concept Lab, a group of over 60 multidisciplinary designers and developers who were given a clear business objective in that their product launches must deliver at least $150 million of new revenue at maturity, being 3 years on the market, otherwise this function would be closed down. By giving design direct responsibility to contribute to the business, along with clearly defined and communicated programs, LEGO catapulted out of dire straits and into organic double-digit growth for over a decade. Speaking of investing in design and ROI, the turnaround was so impactful that in 2014, LEGO had more profit than their two next competitors, Hasbro and Mattel, combined. In fact, the contribution of design was so strong and beneficial to the business that LEGO, along with Park, developed the LEGO Design Academy to help train their development staff to be more efficient and more effective in delivering design value. It should be strongly noted that investing in design is not only about the outward-facing products and services, but should also be inward-facing and investing into the people who design and develop market solutions. At Grow, our professional training company in design leadership, we have helped to develop design leaders that deliver increased value and ROI back into the companies that have decided to invest in their people. Here, you see an overview of our design leadership training, showcasing what we call the fundamentals of leading and managing design. Mastering such fundamentals will indeed deliver a great deal of ROI into both the people who participate, increased motivation and competency development, as well as to the business through increased efficiency and effectiveness, operational excellence, and even cultural transformation. At the heart of the model, you see design value, as at the end of the day, it is all about delivering positive value and significant ROI in all design efforts. Many studies have taken place to prove that design does indeed add value. The majority of these studies are funded and initiated by national design councils, such as the UK Design for Business Association, the Finnish Design Business Association, and the Design Management Institute, who publishes the becomingly well-known Design Value Index. This index, published annually since 2013, proves that companies that invest in design outperform the S&P 500 by an average of over 225%. At Grow, we have combed through, collected, and consolidated common key areas that design can add value to the business. In combination with our previously shown design value framework, we have captured and created a comprehensive design value checklist, identifying the actions, benefits, and metrics for design to deliver value to the business through both tangible and intangible results. Furthermore, in combination with the design value checklist, we have created the design value canvas, which helps to not only identify, but to predict and assess the ROI of design investments across an array of potential activities. Unlike most of the studies done, identifying design ROI from a rearview mirror, our canvas takes a proactive and predictive positioning. This canvas was developed to be used as a working tool to help not only forecast and justify design investments, but also to communicate and eventually prove the value and ROI of design. There are many simple steps to take in using this tool, and you can find out more, as well as download the canvas by going to valuecanvas.design. In closing, if design can now better prove it can deliver great value and ROI to the business, why are we still struggling with this topic and endlessly working to convince the business and non-design stakeholders? A few complicating factors do include that not all business can be translated into metrics, as there are both hard, quantitative data, as well as softer, qualitative value, which may be hard to measure. Also, design does not work in isolation, and in theory, everything has to be designed, from the products and services to advertising and business models. Therefore, it is difficult to always isolate the contribution of design as well as encapsulate total design spends. Lastly, there is often a great deal of lag time between the design investments and capturing data from the marketplace. In Europe, CPG is referred to as FMCG, fast-moving consumer goods, and we often kid that it is more like fast-moving marketing managers, as the average position of a marketeer in leading CPGs is that of 18 months before they have moved on to a new category, a new country, or even a new company. Their bonus is often tied to simply delivering on design and brand projects, and therefore not attached to the market and business success, including the ROI of design initiatives. By changing the reward model, perhaps companies may make proving design ROI more explicit and encouraging for all those involved. Thank you for your time and attention. I hope this webinar served to inform and inspire you further into the realm of design value and ROI. If you would like to know more, please feel free to visit us at leading.design or reach out to me directly at peters@park.bz.
Thank you, Jay. We hope these insights have shed light on how to best measure the effectiveness of your design and marketing programs, and we thank you for your time. We also would like to thank our sponsors, 121 Corp., Digimarc, Dot Matrix, Fiberbox Association, Force Packaging, HP, Porchlight, PrintPack, and WestRock, without which these free webinars wouldn't be possible.